Welcome, weary travelers, to another Arcanarama Homebrew rules video. Today I'm going to talk to you about some of the hard mode D&D homebrew rules that we use for A War of Fang and Fur. This isn't a super exhaustive list, and there are some things on the list that we don't actually use in A War of Fang and Fur. The reason for that is that we had a session 0 where I brought all of these ideas to the table for things that could make a game more harrowing and challenging, since it's our version of the Game of Thrones campaign. And we talked about what seemed like it would make it challenging, what seemed like it would make it less fun, and what that is for our group may be different for yours. So a general reminder, as always, before you implement these homebrew rules to your game as a dungeon master, talk to your players about whether or not they're okay with that, and be willing to budge if they're not. First on the list, fall damage. This is one that we actually do use in our game. So typically, rules as written, damage is 1d6 for every 10 feet that a character falls. There is, however, a cap on how many d6 a character can take, and I believe, without looking it up, which I could do, but I'm not gonna, is 20 d6. I believe 200 feet is the maximum, basically at that point you've reached terminal velocity and you will not take any further damage. However, our homebrew version, you actually take 1d8 damage for every 10 feet that you fall, and there is no cap. Right, fellow teens? For example, falling 10 feet is 1d8 bludgeoning damage, falling 100 feet is 10d8 bludgeoning damage. If you fell 1,000 feet, that would be 100 d8 damage. So be careful when fighting on the cliff sides or on the castle ramparts. Critical success alternative rules. This has three parts to it. We've got critical success on an attack roll, we've got a critical success on a saving throw, and a critical failure on a saving throw. Let's start with attack rolls. Rules as written, when you crit on an attack roll, you roll double the damage die that you normally would for that attack. Now I know a lot of people, enjoyers of Critical Role for example, myself being one of them, typically what we go for instead is you roll the dice, double the die, and then add your modifiers. That in itself is a homebrew rule, but not the one that we use. In our game, when you roll a natural 20 on the die for an attack roll, you take the max amount of damage for a regular attack with said weapon or spell. Then you roll the normal damage die that you would for that attack. Add the two together, then add your modifier, and that is your damage. For example, a critical attack with a greatsword, which is typically 2d6 plus your modifiers, would be 2d6 plus 12 plus your modifiers. So we take the maximum roll that you would have gotten with 2d6, 12, add that to a 2d6 roll plus your modifiers, and that's your damage for a greatsword attack. A crit on an attack with Guiding Bolt at first level would be 4d6 plus 24 radiant damage. Now some of you might be thinking, wow, that sounds really overpowered. A critical is almost an insta-kill on any NPC that the characters might fight. And while that might be true, at the same time, these crit rules apply to my NPCs, so it could be insta-death for a player as well. This is why it's important to talk to your players before you implement these rules in your own games. Now let's talk about a critical failure on a saving throw. Rolling a natural 1 on a saving throw typically is just failing the saving throw. You take the damage that you would take from that spell or effect. In our homebrew hard mode rules, however, a critical failure on a saving throw treats that attack as a crit against the person who failed. Keeping with our previous crit rules, if you were to roll a natural 1 on a dexterity saving throw against a fireball, you would take 8d6 plus 48 fire damage. Once again, this applies to the players and the NPCs. In that same realm, a natural 20 on a saving throw results in no damage. So similar to how evasion works with dexterity-based rolls, a natural 20 success essentially gives you that for any saving throw. You take no damage. Because we gotta keep it fair. Lingering injuries and mortal wounds. So this is one that I brought up to my players that they were kind of on the fence about, so we ended up striking it from A War of Fang and Fur for them. However, I do still use it for the NPCs because, well, partially, I put a lot of work into making the list of mortal wounds, which you can find in the link in the description down below. And also because I think it's just fun for the players to deal a lot of damage and feel more effects than just me saying that that character is now bloodied. So first let's talk about the triggers for receiving a mortal wound. Mortal wounds occur when you take a critical hit from another character or NPC, or when you take an amount of damage equal to or more than half of your remaining HP. Now, that's very hard mode rules. You could go with just an amount of damage equal to or more than half of your maximum HP if you wanted to go a little bit simpler and implement these rules in a less harsh way, but that's not what this is about. This is about being hard and challenging and deadly. in every encounter. I don't want to take up all of this video just talking about mortal wounds. If you want to see an extra video just about this list, let me know. If not, you can check it out through the link in the description down below and read through it for yourself and decide if it's something that you want to implement or not. But the way it works is, if you receive a mortal wound, or the potential for a mortal wound, you make a Constitution saving throw, difficulty 15. Every time it's a DC 15 con save. If you fail that Constitution saving throw, you roll 2d10, add those numbers together, and find on the list what it is that you rolled and take that effect. The lowest you can roll is a 2, the highest you can roll is a 20. So I've got 2d10 here, let's go ahead and roll, and we'll go over, let's say, 3 of the things on this list that could happen to you if you take a mortal wound. First up, I rolled a 15. The blow severs one of your arms. Anything held is dropped, and you have disadvantage on any attack rolls that require 2 hands until a regeneration spell is administered. That one's pretty intense. I've also ruled that if an NPC that has a multi-attack takes this effect, they lose one of their attacks. I don't do that to players though, because I'm not a monster. 6 and a 4 for a total of 10. A major vein is hit and you are bleeding heavily. You take 1d6 of bleed damage unless you use your action to staunch the bleeding. If knocked unconscious while this effect is still in place and the bleeding hasn't been staunched, you have disadvantage on death saving throws. Let's see one more. 9 and 2 for 11. Roll 1d3. That many of your teeth are shattered or knocked out. They can be regrown with the use of regeneration spell or potion. That's just a taste of the Mortal Wounds table. There's a ton of fun stuff on there. A lot of the options have the ability to roll for more things within them. For example, number 12, the hit will leave a large scar on a random body part. You roll 1d6 to decide which part it is. I highly recommend checking it out, even if your players aren't interested in receiving mortal wounds. I've found that they are more than open to delivering them. I've made an entire separate video about our weapon feats. If you haven't seen that, you can check it out right here. These are features that everyone gains access to based on the weapons that they are proficient in and wielding. There's a lot of cool stuff. Go check out that video and the link in that description to find the weapon feats if you're interested in that. The final hard mode homebrew rule that we have here at Arcanarama is Restless in the Wilds. The idea here is that if you are outside of a city or a safe zone of some kind, you will not find your rest as replenishing as it would otherwise be. If you find yourself taking a long rest camping out outside of a city or a safe zone, you only heal 60% of your maximum HP, rounded up to the nearest hit point. Spell slots are unaffected and return as normal because, again, I'm not a monster. As do all other features and traits that you replenish on a long rest, like Rage or Action Surge, all that kind of stuff. For example, if your maximum hit points are 30, you could only heal 18 hit points in the wild on a long rest. If you're not very math-minded, like myself, you can easily calculate how much you heal by multiplying your maximum HP by 0.6 in a calculator. Thank you guys so much for watching. Let me know how you feel about these homebrew rules and which ones you would use or modify in the comments down below. Be sure to check out A War of Fang and Fur. Season 1 in its entirety is available right here on YouTube, and Season 2 will be premiering in October, so we hope to see you then after you've caught up on Season 1. If you're curious, A War of Fang and Fur is our hard mode D&D, very Game of Thrones inspired, in our homebrew world of Fairlorn, where everyone is a humanoid animal of some kind. Think of it as Redwall meets Game of Thrones. It's chock full of danger, political intrigue, furry jokes, and more. Non-diminishing, of course. We're also doing a rebroadcast of A War of Fang and Fur Season 1 leading up to the Season 2 release over on twitch.tv/Arcanarama every Monday night at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. You can join us there live with the cast in the chat to answer your burning questions, or just to say hello and chat with us for a bit while we replay the episodes leading up to the release of Season 2 of A War of Fang and Fur. I hope to see you all there. Until then, stay safe out there, adventurers.